Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're going to unpack something that literally sits at the very foundation of every single business on Earth. We are diving into the theory of production and cost. You can really just think of production as the ultimate business recipe. It's this incredible, almost magical process where a company takes a bunch of raw, unrefined ingredients and somehow transforms them into something of immense value.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever wondered how a massive factory or, I don't know, even just the tiny local bakery down the street decides exactly how much stuff to produce? Or how they know the precise moment when adding just one more worker will actually start costing them money instead of making it? Well, that is the exact problem we're solving today. How do raw materials actually transform into maximum profit?
So here is our game plan for today. First, we'll look at the magic of production. Second, the short run versus the long run. Third, nature and human effort. And finally, capital and the entrepreneur. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the magic of production, defining the recipe. Every firm out there is constantly doing this delicate balancing act, right? They're trying to optimize their resources to maximize profits, totally regardless of what the broader market is doing. And at the very heart of this is something called the production function. Now, it looks like an intimidating math equation, Q equals F of L and K, but don't let the math scare you. Actually, scratch that. Just think of it as our master recipe. Q is our final output. That's the cake we're baking. L stands for labor, and K stands for capital. This simply tells us the absolute maximum output we can get from mixing our active ingredients together, assuming our technology doesn't change. The absolute golden rule here, and you can't forget this, is that input dictates output. Input is your starting line, and output is your finish line. The precise ingredients you dump into a process strictly dictate the final product you get out. If you want to change the quantity of what you're selling, you have no choice but to fundamentally change what you're putting into the machine.
Moving right along to Section 2, short run versus long run, the time horizon.
Now, what's really interesting here is how time horizons completely dictate a business's flexibility. Imagine you run a bakery. In the short run, well, you're kind of stuck with the kitchen you have. The physical size of your building and the number of ovens you own, those are fixed factors. You can always hire more bakers or buy a ton of extra flour. Those are your variable inputs, but you can't magically spawn a brand new oven overnight. In the long run, however, everything becomes variable. You have the total freedom to go out, sign a new lease, build a massive new factory, and completely change the scale of your entire operation. And this brings us to a really fascinating trap called the law of diminishing returns, which happens in that short run. Picture this. In step 1, you've got an empty kitchen with plenty of ovens. You hire one worker, and boom, productivity skyrockets because they have all these tools to themselves. But skip to step 3, and you've crammed 30 bakers into that exact same tiny kitchen. Those fixed factors, the ovens, the floor space, they become incredibly scarce. The capital is completely diluted across way too many workers. They start bumping elbows, waiting in line to use the mixer, and suddenly, the marginal productivity of each new worker just plummets. Your total output might still creep up a bit, but at a painfully slow, decreasing rate. But what happens when we completely escape that short-run trap? In the flexible long run, you can scale up the whole shebang. Workers, ovens, everything. And scaling up leads to 3 possible returns to scale. You might see constant returns, where doubling your ingredients exactly doubles your cake. You might hit increasing returns, where doubling your inputs magically more than doubles your output. I mean, this is the dream, right? True economies of scale. Or you might face decreasing returns, where doubling your inputs results in less than double the output. That usually happens because the company has just grown way too massive and chaotic to manage efficiently. All right, let's look at Section 3, nature and human effort, the first 2 ingredients. To actually make any commodity, we need primary ingredients, which economists call the factors of production. There are 4 of these bad boys in total, and they absolutely must come together simultaneously to create a product. The first factor is land, and I gotta say, I love this list of characteristics because land in economics is so much more than just the dirt under our feet. It's a totally free gift of nature. Its supply is perfectly inelastic, which is a fancy way of saying you literally cannot stretch the earth to get more of it. It's highly heterogeneous, meaning an acre in downtown Manhattan is vastly different from an acre in the Sahara. And surprisingly, land includes everything above and below the surface: minerals, the climate, rain, and yes, even space monitoring. But on its own, it's a completely passive factor. It just sits there waiting to be used. The second factor is labor, which is the human element. Unlike land, labor is very much an active factor. And this brilliantly illustrates a key vulnerability. Labor is highly perishable. Think about it. You can't just bottle up today's unused labor and stick it in the pantry for tomorrow. If a worker is unemployed today, that day's labor is lost to the economy forever. On top of that, workers have feelings, incredibly diverse skills, and imperfect mobility. A software engineer can't just instantly warp across the country to become a farmer tomorrow. Because of all this, the overall supply of labor is actually quite tricky to adjust quickly.
Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 4. Capital and the entrepreneur, the tools and the master chef.
If land and labor are our raw ingredients, capital represents the tools we use to cook, and the entrepreneur, well, they're the master chef, orchestrating the entire kitchen. Let's clear up some massive misconceptions about capital right off the bat. Capital is not just wealth, money, or income. For example, a family car sitting in your driveway, that's wealth. But the exact moment you use that very same car as a taxi to generate revenue, boom, it transforms into capital. Or think about a local ice cream parlor. The profits flowing out of the register are income. That's a flow. But the heavy, super expensive refrigerator keeping all that ice cream cold, that is capital. It's a fund used to generate that income flow.
So what really defines capital? Well, unlike land, capital is completely man-made. It's totally artificial. It is highly productive because it just speeds everything up. Crucially, its supply is actually elastic over the long term, meaning we can always create more of it if we increase our savings and investment. It's durable, sure, though it does wear out and depreciate over time. And unlike a fixed plot of land, capital can usually be moved pretty easily from one factory or even one country to another.
Finally, we have the entrepreneur. The word itself actually comes from the French entreprendre, which simply means to undertake business activities. You could have all the land, all the labor, and the absolute best capital in the world, but they are completely scattered and useless without the entrepreneur. This is our master chef who organizes the chaos of the kitchen and ensures all these factors work together in perfect harmony. So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. The entrepreneur is the ultimate risk bearer. Land gets rent, labor gets wages, capital gets interest. Those payouts are largely guaranteed. But the entrepreneur, they face all the uncertainty. They might enjoy massive, unbounded profits, sure, but there's always the chance they might burn the cake entirely and have to absorb a devastating loss. To avoid burning that cake, a successful master chef needs some very specific traits. They need an exceptional ability to organize. They have to be super innovative, adopting modern techniques way before their competitors even catch on. But honestly, perhaps most importantly, they need prompt decision-making skills. Hasty decisions are bad, obviously, but delayed decisions, those increase the cost of a project and directly eat into the profits. Plus, they have to tactfully negotiate with literally everyone, from suppliers to workers to government officials, just to keep the machine running smoothly. Well, we've covered the complete recipe today, everything from that intimidating mathematical production function to the specific ingredients of land, labor, capital, and the mastermind entrepreneur. So I'm going to leave you with this thought to carry into your day. Next time you're out, look at the businesses, the local shops, the services all around you. Are they successfully mastering their ingredients and scaling up? Or are they stuck in a tiny kitchen, bumping elbows and falling victim to the law of diminishing returns? Keep an eye out for these principles out in the real world, and I promise you'll never look at a business the same way again. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.